Chapter 5. Separate and Unequal. Ah, I see that the separatists are not alone, my king. Look there, Raelif said as he tipped his head towards the direction of Tyrael. His keen eyes had picked out 4 horsemen riding towards them at breakneck speed, intent on reaching them before, or at least at the same time, as the separatists. They are not Arve riders, Alcuin remarked as he shaded his eyes to see them more clearly. Alasha appeared even more annoyed by these riders than the separatists. It's General Michael Baston and some of his officers. Raelif frowned slightly at the name, as if it was familiar to him. Ah, he is the highest leader of the human military on this continent, isn't he? Yes, he constantly seeks to convince Father that he and his people should be allowed to fight with us against the Leviathan. It's ridiculous, of course, she answered. Fight the Leviathan? Raelif let out a bark of laughter. This was one subject that he and Alasha agreed upon. With what? And how? They might as well slit their own throats as go up against a Leviathan. It will accomplish the same thing. They've been told that repeatedly, but General Baston insists that there must be a way for humans to assist in their own defense. Alasha answered with a half-hearted shrug. Father has told them to concentrate on the things they can do, like preserving their history and having children, but General Baston does not listen to reason. And he's not a separatist? Raelif lifted an eyebrow. He respects the laws and wishes to move forward with the Empire. He understands that humanity's only possibility of continuing is with us, but he is determined to make humanity more useful? She shrugged again as she made that statement a question, clearly not understanding the mortal's concerns here. My king, Commander Severin said as he rode around to Aquilin's side. Per Aquilin's request, the protectors remained behind them, so there was at least the illusion of a private ride amongst friends. Raelif liked the fact that Aquilin was confident in his own ability to protect himself, and cared not for the pomp and circumstance of leadership. King Vax was rather the same, but his reasoning was a little different. Allowing someone near him would mean that they would have a chance to strike. Severin continued, Would you have us ride out and deal with these people? No, Commander Severin. I would have you remain where you were. I will handle this, Aquilin said calmly. Severin, they're a bunch of humans. What can they do? Shoot at us with their guns? Alasha shook her head in derision. Human weapons didn't just not work against the Leviathan. An untrained child could handle them. We're not going to handle them with violence, Alasha, Aquilin stated firmly. That will hardly lead to a rapprochement with them. Ah, here he goes again, with that listening to the people thing, and not taking a firm hand with them, Raelif sighed internally. The exact opposite of what Vex would do. Vex would have chopped off some heads, stuck them on pikes, and put them in the town squares, where all the humans could see what happens to those who disobey, Raelif thought. Who am I kidding? He would never have saved humanity in the first place. And I should be glad Aquilin is nothing like him, truly. Words won't either, Uncle, Alasha said. Father has spoken to them until he's blue in the face. It's done less than nothing. I am certain my brother has tried his very best. I doubt I shall do any better, Alasha. But we must try, Aquilin remarked gently, but his eyes met Raelif's. Raelif suppressed a grin. The truth was that while Veslin adored politics, he was terrible at diplomacy. Aquilin had confessed to Raelif that he knew it was a risk to grant Veslin the power of emissary, but their relationship had never been an easy one, so not giving Veslin such a position would have resulted in a rift that they might never recover from. While Raelif thought that such a breach should be encouraged, Aquilin did not. Veslin was all that was left of Aquilin's immediate family. His king would not risk alienating the fussy, arrogant older Arave, but Raelif thought it was just a matter of time before it occurred in any case. And how much damage will Veslin do in the meantime? Raelif thought. I'm sure if anyone can talk sense into them, it is you, Uncle. But Elisha's expression was doubtful that anyone was capable of this. Commander Severin slowly rode back to his prior position. Humans might not be a threat, but this was clearly an insult to Aquilin, and Commander Severin would have liked to answer it with violence. Raelif rather agreed with him, but they'd do it Aquilin's way first, until that way does not work. The three vehicles roared to a halt not 20 feet from them. Dust clouds rose up. Ripped and crushed vegetation was left in their wake. Noxious fumes emanated from their exhausts. He saw Elisha wave her hand in front of her face and cough. Aquilin showed no reaction. Raelif was similarly unmoved, but unlike Aquilin, he was smiling. It was the smile he wore into battle. Aquilin gave Raelif a stern look and said, "They are our people too, Raelif." "Even if they don't think so?" Raelif asked back. "Yes, especially if they don't," Aquilin answered and lightly got down from Arendriel. Raelif and Elisha got down as well. The horses remained where they were, as they were well trained, but also because of the mental connection each of them held with the beautiful beasts. It had been difficult establishing such a connection with Silveril, because the Kindreth controlled the creatures that served them, while the Arave requested a mutual exchange. These horses had expected the latter when he'd tried the former. He'd been tossed off of Silveril's back one too many times until he had, finally, learned the Arave way. Only then had Silveril deigned to allow him to ride her. It was through patience and way too many sugar cubes that had won her over completely. But now she was as close to him as Arendriel was to Aquilin. He was rather proud of that. Arendriel leaned over and started nibbling some flowers. Silveril joined him. Soon all three animals were munching the sweet vegetation. Aquilin made no move towards the humans. He was clearly waiting for the separatists to emerge from their vehicles and approach. They did not have to wait long. The first human got out from a white vehicle, swinging his long legs down as the machine was lifted over a foot in the air on its big tires. He wore jeans, leather pointed toe boots, which Raelif believed were referred to as cowboy boots, and a red and white checked flannel shirt that was untucked. He sported a broad-brimmed white hat, a cowboy hat, and dark aviator sunglasses shielded his eyes. Raelif had made it a point to understand humans, not out of some benign urge to study a dying mortal race, but to make sure they posed no threat. He found, much to his surprise, that he rather liked them as a rule. This first separatist's skin was leathery and tanned a deep bronze, and he appeared, though it was always hard for Raelif to tell human ages, around the mid-century mark. That meant he was a mature adult already in middle age, who likely wouldn't live to see twice that amount. On his hip was a holster with a gun, which he adjusted as soon as his boots hit the ground. In Katir, Elisha whispered, "That is Duke Rohannon, leader of the 401st, as these separatists call themselves. I don't know the other two. They aren't important." She pursed her lips as if she tasted something bitter as she added, "He has an ever-changing cadre of young men, always men, with him." Two younger men, dressed similarly to Rohannon, stepped out of the black trucks that flanked him. They too were armed. Raelif sighed and murmured a few Katir swears that involved the folly of weak men. Aquilin had schooled his expression to be smooth and unreadable. "Do you speak English?" Rohannon asked as he approached. A fork of lightning appeared in the air between him and Aquilin from Raelif's clever fingers, stopping the separatist abruptly. He tried not to show the fear Raelif knew he was experiencing, but the way his hand shot towards his weapon's grip was telling. "You might have that useless gun at your hip, but I have the power of the void at my fingertips, Rohannon, so keep it civil," Raelif thought. "Yes, I can speak English," Aquilin answered in that language. "Good. Not many of your kind do, or not enough to really converse," Rohannon explained, "and my Katir is a bit limited." In Katir, Elisha cursed, The nerve of this pathetic man. It's not as if we expect humans to learn our language. They hardly lived long enough to even get the basics. Aquilin did not chastise her, though if he had, Raelif guessed their king would have pointed out that her belief was the same as Rohannon's, but on the opposite side of the argument. Instead, Aquilin stated in English, "Sometimes there are more misunderstandings when one speaks the same language, but I will do my best." Rohannon grunted. He took a toothpick from an inner pocket and stuck it into the corner of his mouth. He chewed on it for a moment. "Now that you're here, are you taking charge, King Aquilin? Or are you going to let her idiot father continue speaking for you?" Elisha lunged forward, roaring, "You insolent cur!" "Stop," Aquilin said simply, and she froze. He stared at Rohannon for long, silent moments before he stated, "You wish me to hear your concerns, yet you insult my brother? Would that move you to listen to me if our positions were reversed?" Raelif was rather shocked and pleasantly surprised that Rohannon had marked Veslin for the idiot that he was. Maybe these separatists weren't complete fools. Rohannon shifted the toothpick from one corner of his mouth to the other. With a rather engaging smile, he said, "It might. My brother is an idiot. Anyone who claimed otherwise would be a liar that I wouldn't listen to." Raelif's eyes slid to Aquilin. His best friend's expression was smooth, but Raelif knew that Aquilin had a touch of respect for this plain-speaking separatist. He knew he did. "Just because my father will not do as you wish does not make him an idiot," Elisha hissed, "especially when it is to preserve ruins instead of making a new world. Your world. The new world is your world," Rohannon cut in, his voice surprisingly thick with emotion. The two young men behind him shifted uncomfortably, but Rohannon held up a hand to keep them from reacting further. "Your people, King Aquilin, talk about wanting to preserve our society and our history while you destroy even the memory of it." "But you do not live in those cities," Aquilin pointed out. "You have made your own compound, yes?" Rohannon chewed the toothpick. "Your point?" "That you recognize these cities are no longer appropriate for you to inhabit," Aquilin said. "That's because they're crawling with plants," the young man to Rohannon's right growled. "Damn things grow back faster after you burn them." Rohannon left up a hand to quiet the young man. Then he said, "Your magic is making them uninhabitable for us, King Aquilin." But Aquilin shook his head. "That is not true. There are far more problems than simply the foliage that keeps you from living there. For one, there are no longer enough of you to fill a quarter of the near city. You have no power sources that can sustain it. It is not set up for our magical ones either, even if you would accept them. And, most critically, the rifts open more frequency in former large human population centers than anywhere else. It would not be safe for you to be there." "That's your judgment, not ours." Rohannon shook his head. "These cities cannot be used for their original purpose, nor can they be sustained as museums. It is, in fact, dangerous to continue to allow them to lie fallow." Aquilin stated calmly, "When we reclaim the land, we put more of your great bloody white buildings on it, drown it all with flowers." Rohannon chewed angrily. Raelif wondered what the Sun Elves would have done to Kendra's cities. He was sure they would find them just as objectionable as the human ones. They'd likely strip them down for parts, too. But something precious would be lost. There's value in history, Raelif thought. Not that he was terribly sentimental, but he had always been a fan of history. That was where many powerful magics were found. Rohannon pointed at the ruined city as explained, "That is proof that humans created great cities, great civilizations with incredible technology. We sculpted the land, we reaped the vast wealth of it and turned it to our purpose. Our kids and our grandkids won't know that from descriptions in a damned book. A few illustrations by your damned RFA scribes who don't even know what they're sketching won't capture who we once were, who we could be again, and all they'll know is your ways and your greatness and how we can't even protect ourselves without your fucking noblesse oblige." The two men with Rohannon nodded their heads and said, "Yeah, damn straight. Trying to race us. Not right. You shouldn't get to decide." Raelif pursed his lips. These were interesting arguments, to be sure, but then there was the cold, hard truth. Humanity could not protect itself, and the RFA had no interest in keeping this world a museum for a few mortal youngsters to gawk at. He was sure that many believed that humans would be better off not remembering the way things had been anyway. He wasn't certain, though, if Aquilin was one of them. But Aquilin did promise these lands to the big houses, Raelif thought with a twist of his lips. They won't let the cities remain. They might not let the separatists either. That will be an interesting moment for all to experience when those two forces collide. His eyes slid to his best friend. Aquilin's gaze was steadily upon Rohannon. He did not appear angry or defensive like Elisha clearly was. Aquilin was intently listening. It was a skill that few leaders had in Raelif's estimation. Normally, leaders thought what they had to say was the only important thing, and others should listen. But Aquilin was nothing like that. "Most of it's already gone. That city sprawled for fucking miles." Rohannon spread his arms as if to explain its size. "Now, it's just a small section of the downtown left. A couple of the skyscrapers. You don't even get a sense of the scale of what it was, but your brother won't even let us keep that much." Aquilin let Rohannon's anguished words sit between them for a long moment. Again, Raelif knew there was truth in what this man said. But that didn't mean the city shouldn't be razed. Having such a ruin so near Tyrael, with all those rifts opening, letting who knew what out of the Underdark, would be a mistake. Aquilin likely understood why Veslin had been so resistant to keeping even a vestige of this place. "You want to hang on to the past," Raelif said, not mockingly, but in empathy. He gave a sad, withered smile. He normally did not speak like this, but he found himself moved to do so. The Kindreth knew what it was like to lose everything and have to begin again. Maybe what they had learned could help these separatists understand. He felt Aquilin's eyes upon him as he said, "You believe that you cannot achieve greatness again if you forget the greatness that came before. But it's not true. There is future greatness. But you can't get there from here by looking back." He felt the warmth of Aquilin's regard for his words. Yes, his king liked him showing empathy to this weathered, worn man, but he doubted what he'd said had reached Rohannon. There was too much fresh hurt and anger deep in the separatist's heart. "You want to infantilize us. You want us to feel we're nothing." Rohannon spat with more "yes" from his crew. "If we forget ourselves, we have only how you see us to define us." "We do not wish that upon you or feel that way about you," Aquilin dissented, but then held up a hand when Rohannon was about to dispute that. "But you clearly believe otherwise." "Because it is otherwise." Rohannon glared at him. Raelif could feel that glare through those dark glasses. "I'm just here to tell you that if you so much as touch that city, there will be hell to pay." "Are you threatening the king?" Raelif's voice was edged even as his smile grew. But just as Rohannon was about to answer him, the 4 horsemen arrived. The leader of this group was a regal-looking man with ebony-colored skin and a bald head. He wore a long, brown suede coat, cut up the back so that it laid neatly on either side of his saddle. The flared collar framed his angular face that was set into an expression of grimness. "In Katir," Elisha explained, "that is General Michael Baston, the one I was telling you about earlier, Uncle." "Yes, I recall," Aquilin said with a brief nod. Raelif observed closely the two very different human leaders. "See that your hearing, Rohannon, is as good as it has ever been. This isn't your time to meet the king," Baston said, his voice low and not quite menacing, but it indicated a man that was used to being respected and obeyed. "Are you arranging his engagements now, General?" Rohannon's voice was higher and had a definite sneer. "Are you a goddamn social secretary for them now?" Baston did not get off his horse, but instead nudged the animal forward, so that he was between them, much like Raeliff's electrical wave had been before. The general was willing to protect them with his body, which showed he was brave. He stared down at Rohannon for long, silent moments. Raeliff felt the tension build in himself, even though that stare was not aimed at him. "You will remove yourself and these vehicles from the king's path. Emissary Veslin will let you know if King of Aquilin has time to hear your complaints," Baston said, completely ignoring Rohannon's words. "We've said what we had to say," Rohannon retorted. "Come on, boys. We have better things to do than parley here any longer." They all watched in silence as Rohannon and his henchmen entered their foul-smelling vehicles and roared away, ripping up more vegetation under their wheels. It was only when the noise of them was distant and almost gone that General Michael Baston turned to face them. He did not get off his horse, which Raeliff thought was quite the power move. Baston was attempting to show them that he was an equal to Aquilin, a representative of humanity, not a vassal. "King Aquilin, it is an honor to meet you. The sun shines brighter when I am in your presence," Baston said in fluid Katir. Raeliff lifted an eyebrow. What had Elisha said about humans being unable to master even the basics of their language? "Your light adds to mine, General Baston." Aquilin bowed his head with the formal response. "I hope you don't mind that we switched to English. One of my boys, Findlay, is teaching me Katir, but I am not quite as fluent in it as I would like to be, and fear I will offend," Baston said in English. "But of course," Aquilin responded in English. "I need to practice myself. I hope you will give me some leeway if I make any mistakes." "You likely speak English better than most of the native speakers, myself included, King Aquilin, but I will surely give you whatever grace is needed," Baston said agreeably. "I thank you," Aquilin said, "for this grace and for your intercession." "Though there was no need for it," Raeliff added dryly, switching to English too. "Oh, I wasn't protecting you all," Baston said with a slight laugh. "I'm not so blind to humanity's abilities, or lack thereof, to know that those weapons the Separatists carried couldn't harm you, nor could their fists or feet. I wanted to make sure that they didn't get hurt by forgetting that." "You think I would strike out at them?" Aquilin was frowning. Baston's dark-eyed gaze slid to Elisha. She was suddenly studying the ground between her feet very intently. Raeliff's eyes narrowed. Had Veslin hurt some of the humans? There had been no such reports, but perhaps Veslin had known better than to put such incidents to paper. "I see," Aquilin finally said as he turned back to the general. "I would speak to you more about how things have been going here in my absence, General Baston." "I'm happy to talk on the way to the Aria's palace," Baston answered. Elisha looked relieved, probably believing that her father could undo any damage Baston could inflict in the short ride to the palace. But that was not to be. "I think I would rather speak somewhere more private," Aquilin said, which had Raeliff lifting an eyebrow. "More private than the palace?" Baston looked intrigued. "Yes. A great friend of mine has opened an inn in Tyrrell. It's called the Sudden Dawn," Aquilin said. "Let us go there." Raeliff grinned. So there would be wine and danger. He liked nothing better. So we met Duke Rohannon, leader of the 401 and some of the human separatists. What do you think about them? Specifically, do you think that anything the separatists stand for maybe are good points? I mean, it's easy to see the good the RFA are doing for the world, and I definitely get a tingle going down my leg at the thought of magical energy sources that don't pollute.
But imagine our world changed to this one. No more cars, no more internet, no more skyscrapers, no more airplanes. And the more time passes, the more the place looks like Middle Earth instead of our Earth. Can the Separatists really save Chicago? Should it be saved? What should be saved? Who gets to write the history books in this case? Let me know what you're thinking about in the comments about this, because it was interesting. I set out to write something that I thought was going to be pretty lighthearted and that the danger and darkness were going to come from the Leviathan. But of course, as I'm writing and really delving into this world, I realized that having elves come and save us and then occupy this place would lead to interesting and difficult conversations and discussions and thoughts about how this was all going to work. And the Separatists, at first, I meant them to just be, I don't know, not paper cutouts, but I didn't realize they were going to have as much good points as they have in my own mind. I was like, oh, wait, yeah, this is going to be a problem. What are you thinking when you hear this? And once again, please do like and subscribe. It really makes a difference. It lets YouTube know that this is something worthwhile to share with others. And I'm really looking forward to having a deep, in-depth discussion with you guys about this story, because I really feel like it lends itself to that. And it's definitely something that I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on. Thanks.